Hi, everyone. Welcome to Pandemic Punditry. Thank you for joining our lamb, mutton, mince, and foie gras, all cruelty-free panel this morning, evening, and afternoon, depending on where in the world you are. We will be streaming via Zoom and Facebook Live today. Please send any questions for our panelists in the Q&A section on Zoom. And of course, use the comment section on Facebook Live for any questions as well. These questions will be moderated by Karthika, who will join us in a bit. And then she will pose those questions at the appropriate time to our panelists. And so that's how we will do it. Today's format is a little different. We want to have an entertaining and lively sort of roundtable discussion with our panelists on a very meaty and delicious subject, which is lamb, mutton, mince, and foie gras. I don't know about the rest of you, but it's sort of should get you all hungry by the end of our session. So that's the aim today. So maybe, Nicholas, I know you're joining us from Paris, France. It's 5 a.m. or thereabouts in the morning there. So thank you for joining us that early. And I think we have Sunny joining us very late at night from San Francisco. Jin, you're joining us from Malaysia, right?
Singapore. Yeah.
Oh, you're from Singapore. Okay, all right. So that's great. And Simrajit is joining us from Delhi, and he's also joined by his partner in crime, Shushmit, husband and wife team of entrepreneurs. So we're happy to have everybody on board today. So let's start with you, Sunny, if you don't mind. So what's your lamb made of? I mean, what's the main protein, plant protein that you're using for your lamb?
We're still evaluating two proteins, soy or pea. I think just stepping back one level up, I think what makes us unique is in terms of flavors. So a lot of the first generation of plant-based alternatives really benchmark to domesticated animals. So, animals to the beef to the domesticated cow, pig to the domesticated swine. And essentially what you're doing is you're benchmarking to an inferior product because the cow that we domesticate, the pig that we domesticate isn't made for taste. It's made for like reproduction, speed of growth, resistance to antibiotics. So we decided to benchmark to wild and heritage animals. So this is sort of like the lamb or sheep, essentially your grandfather would have ate. That's sort of our key difference. With regards to the texturized protein that we use, that's sort of like what do the customers want? How can we best achieve that? And how can we get the best texture? But we're not beholden to any one sort of protein source.
So when you're benchmarking this to a particular sort of taste profile, the heritage meats that you're talking about, so how do you do that? I mean, do you have a panel of people who taste the plant-based versus the heritage meat to see where you're on the spectrum?
It's more so based off of, it's a little bit more scientific than that. So the first thing that we do is we take the piece of meat and we understand the volatiles that are dissipating off. And what you essentially end up with is like thousands of compounds. And for the first couple of animals we were doing this, we did it through a little bit more of a brute force. Like, okay, now that we have like 1,000 compounds, which one of these are actually important? And then, we would do this A/B testing with like actual meat versus ours based off of the different sort of compounds that we put inside. What we quickly realized is that's not a smart way of doing it. And this is sort of a perfect big data problem. So as we sort of add more data to understanding which compounds are important for particular animals, the next animal, that fog of war is lifted and you get to like triangulate which 100 compounds really matter. And then you add more data, which 50 compounds really matter. So it's a bit of science, but at the end of the day with food, I think like, we forget, but the human organs are so advanced that you don't have like a digital nose that could just smell and say like, use this ones, right? So that's the methodology in a quick nutshell.
Oh, wow. So it's a combination of sort of using sophisticated technology to sort of create a benchmark, whittle it down, and then ultimately, obviously, you human testing or tasting, sorry.
Exactly.
The matches up. So that's great. Jin, so joining us from Singapore, what's your product, the mince, made of primarily, or what is it? A soy based?
Yeah. Hi everyone. My name is Jin. I'm one of the co-founders for Future Foods. So our product is actually called Future Mince. which is designed to looks like, smells like, tastes like, and cooks like the real minced pork. And in terms of our ingredients, actually we are using quality protein sources such as like non-GMO soy, chickpea, pea, and rice protein, because we want to create a more complete protein profile for our customers. And what's unique about us is that we really go deep and understand what makes like pork so well liked, especially in the Asian community. It's actually simply because of that like fatty mouthfeel within the minced meat. And using our proprietary metrics of processing technology of incorporating actually rice into our future blend, we are actually able to create the emulsification through interactions within the proteins and fats in our product, which actually gives it that very nice additional fatty, juicy mouthfeel to the product, which mimics the fats within the real minced meat. So this combination of lean and fat actually delivers a really rich mouthfeel quality in every bite of our future mince.
Oh, wow, wonderful.
Yeah.
Okay, Simranjit, I know you have a whole range of meats that you manufacture. I mean, everything from fish to mutton to chicken. Give a little bit of sort of your story. I know that it's a pretty interesting one. So maybe if you can spend a few minutes and let us all know what's special about what you do.
Yeah, hi all. I'm Simranjit Singh from Mr. Veg, India. So we are making a plant-based meat, plant-based chicken, and a fish. And the fabulous thing is what we have made. The texture is so much of fibrous that is a very difficult to judge is the meat or not. So when I will allow, I will show my product boxes. And if you can, after a few minutes, if you can give me a few minutes, because I have made one video for my presentation for earlier. So that will show my story from where we started and where we are now and where we'll go. And the product right now we are making with soy and wheat protein. We have our own extrusion facility and we have our own factory. And we are making ready to cook product, ready to eat products. And we have a special purpose machinery for fish making, because I was into automobile industry before 2012. So I have a keen knowledge of engineering. So because of that knowledge, I changed the whole extrusion according to me, and I self-developed the whole fish line to create. So this is a wonderful thing we have done. So we will show you our products photos and all. So thank you.
Great. Thanks, Simranjit. I have to admit that from everybody on the panel, the only food I've actually tried and tasted is Simranjit's. He has an ambient, ready-to-eat, like a mutton curry, and it was just absolutely unbelievably good. Spicy as hell, but it was so good, right? So I actually tried it. It's an ambient product. All you have to do is dunk the bag in boiling water, and then you have food to go, already prepared. So that was there. So Nicholas, I hope you had enough coffee. I see dawn is slowly creeping up on the out of your window. So you have something a little different from everybody else, right? So foie gras, I remember the last time I was in Paris, I think I ate it almost every day. One of my most favorite foods prior to becoming a vegan about 3 years ago. So I'm really looking forward to eventually trying your product. So just give us an idea of where you are in the process and why foie gras.
Sure. So we are, as you can see, we are based in Paris. I mean, based on the time zone. I'm one of the 3 co-founders of Gourmet. So my 2 partners are biologists. I'm the business guy of the team. And we are essentially focusing on foie gras mostly because, as you may know, the cell-based technology is going to have high costs at the beginning. And we think that it's better to have significant market shares and target a product where there's a real market need for a cruelty-free alternative than take very small percentage of a big market, let's say chicken nuggets or pork sausages or whatever. So we think it's the smartest move for a cell-based meat company in the first phase of the industry to target a very premium product. And in the case of foie gras is actually a very fatty product. 60% of the product is fat, and fat is arguably, the animal fat is arguably the missing piece between plant-based alternatives and real meat products. And so if you target a very fatty product using the cell-based technology, then you have a higher chance of being super close and even identical to the real product, because you're leveraging this very specific animal ingredient, animal fat, to make the product as flavorish and as tasty as possible. So this is really our angle. And obviously the investment and the energy that we spend on building this technology platform is so huge that we couldn't stop only at foie gras. So foie gras is only the beginning of our journey. And we want to use our cells as a very flavorful ingredient to develop other meat alternatives. So we are looking at the step 2 on hybrid products. So products where you'll have a small percentage or higher percentage of cells, of animal cells, combined with plant-based products to compensate what the cells do not bring, whether it's the texture or the flavors. And this is really the step 2 that we are looking at. But for the first years of the company, we'll be focusing on this premium delicacy that is being banned in most regions of the world. So 17 countries have already banned the production of foie gras. So yeah, people are actually waiting for our product, because even beyond the vegan and the vegetarian community, foie gras is maybe the #1 product, especially in France or in Spain, that you ban, even though you're not a vegan or a vegetarian, because there's a big problem within the way it's produced.
So your culture is you're culturing duck egg cells. If I
yeah, we start from duck egg cells. So these are called stem cells, essentially cells that can specialize into any cell type. They are in the egg, the duck egg, and they will essentially become the whole body of the duck. So in our case, the end product, the end cells that we're working with is liver cells. So they're called hepatocytes. And one big piece of our technology is to specialize the stem cells into liver cells. So reproduce that process that happens within the egg, where essentially the body of the duck is being formed, and the stem cells become liver cells or muscle cells or fat cells. In our case, we're really specializing on the liver cells specialization.
Okay. And how long between now? I mean, I know you just started. So what is your target for sort of having a product out there? 5 years from now?
We started the company about 10-12 months ago. So that was spring 2019. So as any cell-based company, we are not in the market next week or within the next 6 months. It's a bit hard to commit to a specific launch date, mostly because there's a regulation process that could take up to between, 8 to 12 to 16 months. In every regions of the world, these products are not yet ready to go to market from a regulation perspective. So we still have to work with the regulators, whether it's in the US or even in Europe. So let's say within the next 2 to 5 years, that's where you will see the first products in the market. It really depends also on the scale. Of course, if you're looking at providing foods for 5-10 restaurants in California or in Paris or in Singapore, then this can happen earlier than this. But if you're looking at the scale that people can actually buy the product in hundreds of restaurants or even in small scale supermarket, that's mostly 3 to 5 years.
Okay. And Sunny, so where are you? I mean, are you still in the R&D stage, or when do you? No. Okay.
Yeah, we're done with the R&D stage. We're planning on launching in 2 months' time in the Bay Area and in LA. So super excited about that. We've done test runs with people, and we benchmarked ourselves against a lot of the other plant-based products out there, and people are like blown away. So we've had comments like, I've been a vegan for 12 years and I've tried every plant-based meat out there, and like I've never tasted anything like this. So it's been really exciting about the feedback, and we, based off of research from Intel, it makes a lot of sense. Taste is the #1 factor that people look at with regards to plant-based alternatives. They say it's environmentalism, they say it's like animal welfare, but at the end of the day, if it doesn't taste good, no one's going to eat your product. And so for us, it's been super exciting to see that change in people's faces when they eat something that put a lot of hard work into. And so in 2 months, you'll be able to catch us in LA and SF. Visit blacksheepfoods.com or Black Sheep Food. We own that domain name as well, or redirect you, and keep an eye out.
So is it going to be in a mince form, or is it going to be a patty, or I mean, what is the?
We have both. We have ground and we have burgers. We also did a survey. What we found, now that the pandemic's going on and I'm sitting at home, convenience is the #1 factor. So I have a bunch of Beyond and Impossibles and Black Sheep burgers in my fridge or freezer. And anytime I want to eat something, I move it to the fridge and I just cook them up. And it's so much easier than like if I had a mince. Because with the mince, you have to then like plan what the hell do you want to create. You have to make ragu. Like it's just like a huge bar. So what we realized, and I don't know how to, with OmniPork, I don't know how this plays in Asian countries because obviously we're not there. But in California, what we found is we did a bunch of surveys. We had 150 respondents, and they all said like the number one thing was burgers. The number two thing surprising was meatballs, which now makes sense. The number three thing was kebabs, and the last thing was ground. So we were actually going to launch with the ground product, but then seeing that overwhelming support for convenience, which again, a lot of sense. You have kids running around, you have work to do, you want to be able to throw something on a pan, put it into bread essentially, and just eat it, right? And so launching with both a burger and ground product, quickly hopefully following it up with meatballs and other highly convenient products.
So is there I know that Simranjit sort of tracked this a bit. So mince seemed to be sort of an easier thing to make, but making something that's like meaty, like a chunk of meat seems to be a bit more challenging. Is that true or not true? It depends on the technology that you use, or a preference, Sunny.
I think Simranjit could probably talk a little bit better about this. I think like with the cubes, with the ground, you can make cubes because you sort of add one or two more components to give you that ability to mold it, because that's what people expect with ground, right? And so with those cubes, you could then fry it up and make a curry, or you can make like a skewer of a kebab and cook it in that manner. I think there might be like the next step, which is where cell-based possibly comes in, and or 3D printing with plant-based components comes in, because it's really hard to recreate the muscle fibers. Muscle fibers are very long and complex in an animal. With plant proteins tend to be shorter, and they have harder sort of ways of hooking together to create longer structures. And that's why cell-based is viewed as like, the next phase, because you have all these textural gains you can make. Okay. But with plant-based, I think there's ways of doing that, and maybe somebody could talk to this, because I'll be curious about this as well. I know 3D printing and other things, but I think with the extrusion process, you can get pretty far. I don't think you get all the way there, but would love to hear sort of your thoughts on that.
So Jin, before I jump to Simranjit, Jin, you're doing a mince as well, right?
Yes.
Okay. And so you've obviously benchmarked this against OmniPork, I guess, which is the major competitor in the region for you.
Yeah, in a way, yeah. But ultimately, I think everyone's main competitor will still be the real meat, right? The traditional meat.
Right. That's a very good answer, by the way.
Yeah.
So we're supposed to have David will be joining us in August on a panel.
Okay. That's good. Yeah.
So I've had the OmniPork before. I've tried that. So what is the initial feedback that you're getting from your customers? Are you ready to go to the market right now? Do you have it available, or you're still?
Actually we have actually done a soft launch in Singapore. But mainly through food service only. We are not available in retail yet. Okay. And a little bit contrary to what Sunny said, actually mince in Asia is used really widely, especially for mince pork. It appears in a lot of our dishes like dumplings, siu mai, your noodles, your rice, and etc. So and that's why we actually launched with the mince and through food services. And we have done that with quite a few restaurants in Singapore, and the response has really been great. They did very interesting stuff with it. They made like Chinese dumplings. They made sweet and sour pork. They made zhajiang noodles. And one of them actually even made into like the rice dumpling. I'm not sure if you know what it is. Because there's a Dragon Boat Festival right now in Singapore. So basically it's glutinous rice mixed with minced pork, with mushrooms and so on and so forth. So it's very versatile, and the chefs really like to use it in this format, because they can play around with it. They can put their own marination sauce, they can put their own seasoning and make it into their own dishes. So and in fact, like one of the restaurants actually, they used to do traditional pork dumplings, and we collaborated with them. They launched the future dumplings, and because of the virus, everything turned into delivery option, right? Right. And and the response was quite overwhelming, very overwhelming. That in the end he took off his traditional meat dumpling off his menu and only retained the fusion dumplings.
Wow! Congratulations. That's significant, right? That's where obviously all of us want to sort of take this too. That we replaced the real thing with what we are doing. So it's really good. So Simranjit, I know you do you have some packaging to show, Simranjit, of some of the things that you have? I don't know whether we'll have time to play a video or not, but just talk a little bit about your extrusion, because you've done the fibers. I mean, what I ate that you gave me, the curry was, I mean, that had the texture, the meat, it felt, I mean, just the muscle fibers were all there, as Sunny would say. All right. So how did you? Yeah. So it looks like that. Yeah. And so Simranjit, how did you get? Is that an extrusion process that you're doing? Gets those muscle fiber feel? You're on mute. You're on mute. You're on mute.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
See, this is a whole muscle product.
Whole muscle product. Okay.
And this is a minced one.
Okay.
And this is what is a fish.
Okay. Fishless pomfret. Okay.
And this is that ready to eat product.
Okay. So that's the meatless curry is what I think what I had.
Which I sent to you. See, This is made by this only.
That's okay. So, you turn it into a prepared or already prepared food.
Yes.
Okay.
So the main product is come by the extrusion process. I have a extrusion of high moisture extrusion and low moisture extrusion too. So the minced one is like when the products come out from the extrusion, and after the process comes in, the product come in this form.
Okay.
And the product comes in this form.
Okay.
So using a mincer machine, we make the minced product like this. Using the mincer machine, because from the extrusion, minced product doesn't come. But we can get the minced product directly from extrusion also. For that, we have to change the extruder settings, extruder dies, and some technical things we have to change in extrusion. So we can get the direct from mince material from extrusion also. But here in India, because the burger is not a hero product in India. Like if we talk about the Beyond and the Impossible, they are the basic product. They are the hero product is a burger patty. But Lavi is here in India, and Sunny, I think you are from India. So India in burger patty is not a hero product in India. And in India, we need like a whole muscle product. In India, we need chicken tikka. In India, we need butter chicken. In India, we need tandoori chicken. There are lots of variety of chicken and mutton in India. So we decided to go with a whole muscle meat. So making the burger patty is not a big task for us, because like you said, in the minced form, by using the minced form, we can make any product like sausages, like the burger patty, and other so many products we can make. But making the whole muscle meat is a very big task, because right now extrusion process is a very difficult process. Because if you buy the extrusion from the Buller and some other company, there is millions of dollars they charges for extrusion. But we didn't buy it from them. We buy it from some other country, and we bought in India and did so much of R&D and changed the extrusion, and now this products come. If you allow me to share the screen, I can show you the exactly fibers of the.
Yeah, just what you, so because you're a mechanical, auto mechanical sort of background, you actually modified the original machines to create this muscle extrusion process. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Machine is of a whole muscle meat only, but in India, like in whole the world, all the crops have a different moisture, all the crops have different protein value, because if in India, if you match the Indian soya and US soya, there is so much of difference in it. Jin can, because Jin is from Singapore, if he is using the soy product, he know, like the raw material also have a different nutritious value around the world. So this is a very big task. And
could I ask a question? In terms of like incorporating fat, because I know with extrusion, one of the more difficult parts is getting fat inside inside the whole muscle. If you're creating it, getting both muscle and fat together is a very difficult task. And I think that's why, Jin and myself, and Jin, if I'm speaking for you, then let me know, because you talked about like mouthfeel and the fattiness, and that's why we start with like, you know, this sort of piecemeal creating of mince and or burger, because we add fat separately and then we add like muscle fiber separately, and we create like this mouthfeel product. With regards to, you know, doing the whole muscle, I think that's something that we could possibly do, but the hard part that we always fall short on is like, how do you incorporate fat into that procedure? Because it's very high pressure, very high temperature, and it tends to either dissolve out or essentially just like, you know, not phase out, or like different things of that nature. So,
yeah, so what you're saying is, Sunny, you get the muscle fiber, but you won't get the fattiness and the juiciness of the muscle fiber. So is that something that, I mean, don't share all your trade secrets, or if it's
exactly.
Is that something you cracked?
Yeah, what Sunny is saying is really a very original thing he's saying, because what he talked is a very technical part. This is a very big task to create fat with muscles in extrusion process, because if we add fat in that, the texture goes. So this is really a very big task. So few days back, right now, when we are in ProVeg Incubator, so we had a fireside chat with Jody Puglisi. He's a researcher, he's a R&D scientist of Beyond. So like a Beyond Meat. So I was arguing this like you. Okay, how you create the fat in extrusion process? So he said, no, that is a very difficult task. We add fat in post extrusion. So,
exactly.
Yeah. We also add fat in post-extrusion, but we are also trying our best to add fat in pre-extrusion. But adding the fat in pre-extrusion, adding the fat in pre-extrusion, create a very less texture. But if we want to bring the like this texture, if you want to bring, so without fat it can be possible only. But after post-extrusion, fat can be added. He's right.
And I think this is what speaks to sort of like the regional discrepancies with how startups are evolving. Like in India, because you put your meat inside curries, which butter chicken is, as it sounds, the base is butter. You already have enough fat. You could use this process. And, you know, with Jin, like he's like, I'm starting with mince first. Americans are like, give me the easiest thing. So it's also fun to see like how you have very targeted products for regions. So that just, that's why I was like, how is he doing this with fat as well? But good to know that you.
I learned something new, guys. I know now that there is a fat process. You know, fat and muscle are something very hard to do in extrusion. So it's post and pre would be the holy grail. Okay, so I learned something. That's always great when I learn something brand new. So Karthika, you managed to get. I think you're on mute. You had a question?
Yeah, sorry. It's interesting because speaking of all of this extrusion processes and things like that, kind of leads me to ask, do any of you guys have like a biotech background or food technology background? How did you get here?
Anybody with a food tech or a biotech background? I worked for a cell-based meat company prior to this. But I was a product manager, so just always worked with engineers and teams. More like systems. The second panel in a row where we haven't had somebody with a food technology or biotechnology background. The reason we asked that question, and Karthik, I think you're very smart to ask that question, is essentially, we have a lot of entrepreneurs and potential entrepreneurs listening to our shows a lot, and if they're daunted by how do I get into this space, I need to have all this sort of food tech, biotech background, because I mean, what you've described is a lot of science, by the way, right? I mean, this whole fat and extrusion, and I mean, this is obviously stuff you've acquired and learned. And I think the last panel also had no food technologies or biotechnologies on it. And I know we have an auto engineer here, but other than that, I think everybody else is from a non-tech tech background. So it's interesting. I think you can acquire those. And what the other panel said was, if you don't have somebody, then you can always find or hire a food techie. Like I think Nicholas obviously will have to do a lot of hiring because he's very much a very involved science process of cell replication and fermentation and all that. So obviously you would need those. And I'm sure on your side, you'll need all the science and technology as well. So it's interesting. So, I mean, I guess what we're hoping to communicate to our audience is that, hey, if you have an idea, launch it and then acquire the skills as you go along. I think that's very good. No, I would say get a co-founder that has those skills. So Nicholas I also have a co-founder who's very much smarter than me and so he's still in the lab doing his work. So Nicholas also has two co-founders, right, who are doing the science.
I thought one was not enough, so I
Yeah.
to the board.
Yes.
And Simranjit, is Sushmit the food tech as well, or no? Both of you are non-techies as well.
So she's not a food, but she's like a very good cook, because of what recipes you also sampled is made by her only.
Oh yes, I can definitely.
She finalized all the recipes and further cook developed that.
Oh great, I can vouch for that.
Yeah, and I have freelancer food techs also and food scientists also working with me. But the prior session of yours, I was listening with Evo Foods and others. So there was the same panel, I think, that Karti asked them who is the Biotech, and there was no answer. So I remember we were in Niftam where Dr. Ritu was also there. So like when I was on the stage, so I told to all the students who was doing the food scientists, like, see, if without having the background of food biotech we can create this, like, see what you can create, you can't imagine. So there is a lots of potential in the plant-based space, cell-based space right now around the globe. So having the background is not a big task, because right now we can see Sunny, we can see myself, Nicholas and Jin, we have no background and we are creating the product. That's the truth. We are not in the dreaming project. We have the product in hand and we can do. If we have the mission, we have the vision, definitely we can do, I think.
Yes, great. I think that's really encouraging. Kartika, did you have additional questions or?
Yeah, Lavi. So this is fascinating talking about all of this fat extrusion and meat extrusion and all of that stuff. But what I'd really like to know is, you know, if you plan, do you have any plans for expansion, and sort of what markets are you targeting, or where to sort of next?
Anybody in particular, Kartika? Or?
Yeah, Sunny, do you want to go first? Or?
Oh no, I think as a startup, we live like 6 months at a time. We just have to execute here. You can't get ahead of yourselves. If we could succeed in 2 places and do a good job, I think we'd be very happy. We try not to like get our heads above.
You have plans, because lamb is obviously Australia, New Zealand is a big market for lamb. I know India is a big market for lamb.
If we were to sort of expand, we would probably do UK and EU. The UK, I believe, has a 10% vegetarian/vegan population, a large Muslim population due to the fact of like migration patterns to the UK, also with the EU as well. So for us, like huge markets, they really care about sustainability, price, ability to pay, very high. You know, all the factors with those 2 regions really line up well. I think the issue with the UK and EU are always like, you know, regulatory labeling. It's just the bar is very high. Plus, surprisingly, not, or maybe unsurprisingly, like particularly in France, and maybe Nicholas talked this a little bit more, but like huge protections for farmers and things of that nature, just because they really value. And I'd be interested to hear how, as a cell-based meat company, you're also navigating that, because they really, really sort of care about their farmers, where their food, they subsidize the good foods. You know, unlike in America, we subsidize like corn and really weird crops. They actually do a good job on the crops that they subsidize. So how are you going to navigate that, Nicholas?
Yeah, Nicholas, good question.
Yeah, that's
sure.
good.
So the honest answer is that we don't know what will be our target market at this point. We are definitely looking at the US or Asia. Places like Singapore made a lot of sense for us, even for a soft launch or a test market. That's for the foie gras answer. But then going forward, as we're working with duck cells, we know that most of the duck meat market is in China, in Asia in general. Actually, China is the #1 duck meat market. France is the #2 duck meat market. So there's sort of logic to eye into Asia. But obviously, in our case, the regulation will play a big part. So we are definitely talking to a lot of people in the different regions. We are also discussing with the other startups in Europe, the cell-based meat startups in Europe, to help the regulator find the right way to regulate our products. I'm following also very closely the discussions in the US, and places like Singapore. It's very inspiring because there is a strong political will to bring these products to market. So I've spent actually the last 6 months just before the pandemic in Singapore. And it was so energizing to see the people there and the government and all the government agencies really looking forward to bringing this product to market and shaping the way for a safe launch of these products. And I think they want to be the first country in the world to regulate the cell-based products. At least it's their will. So yeah, in our case, the regulation is definitely a key aspect of the question. But to complement what Sunny was saying about the EU and France in specific, it is true that it's maybe one of the most conservative markets when it comes to meat. We have a lot of protection for farmers indeed. And just last week, the labeling, the plant-based meat labeling got a strong hit because now we cannot actually label the product with meat-like names. So sausage has been banned, burger has been banned for plant-based alternatives, nuggets, and so they
call them then now. Is it just like, what do
Sorry?
you say? What's the new term that people are going to use?
What are you allowed to say?
Yeah, what are you allowed to say?
Well, for instance, even for the plant-based meals, we are allowed to say beverage and not meal. So it's beverage. It's like soy beverage. Even yogurt is forbidden for plant-based milk yogurt. So you're saying like dessert, plant-based meat dessert, and
So you can't even say like Simrajit does, not meat or not milk.
No brand has played this card yet, but I think it's smart and it would push the regulation forward. But yeah, it's a very conservative market these years. Not foie gras.
Nicholas, one of the things that we found when we were talking to Dr. Sandy of Shiok Meats is that, especially in Singapore and stuff like that, she was saying there was a lot of excitement in the celebrity chefs, the gourmet chefs around the cell-based, Are you finding the same thing as well with foie gras? I mean, obviously being such a delicacy and all of that.
Yes, for sure. We think we have the most suitable product for partnering with chefs, and we have already selected and built great relationships with some of them, whether it's in the US or in Europe. Still haven't found a chef in Singapore, but very happy to be connected if you have anyone in mind. I'm sure there will be plenty of people interested in our product. The only thing is that our prototypes are not traveling well, so we have to keep the product in Paris at the moment. And obviously we don't have massive quantities, so we still cannot really ship, any huge pieces of foie gras for chefs to play with and start understanding the product better. But this will come in the next month, so I'm not too worried that we'll be able to find really great partners in a few months from now. Yeah.
So Jin, what's your plan? I mean, you got a huge swatch of area, right? All of Asia to cover, who are all pork aficionados.
Yeah, I mean, right now for us, I think we are very focused on Singapore for the time being. I mean, we want to continue. We just started in Singapore. We want to build a base here. We want to put our foot down here and make sure we have a solid base. So we are looking at hopefully going into 300 restaurants in just this small country, and maybe even within the central business district, we are looking at probably 1,000 plant-based meals a day. But of course, looking beyond that, we have our eyes on China and Thailand. Yeah, because ultimately, if you look at pork, half of the world's pork is actually consumed in China. So it makes a lot of sense to actually go into China.
Okay.
Yeah. And also, Simrajit, are you sort of looking to sign up with like a meal subscription service, or looking to offer, Mr. Veg, just like a meal subscription service? Because obviously, as Lavi said, it's an ambient product.
Part of his product is ambient, yeah.
Yeah.
We started a company in 2018, and at the end of 2019, we completed our all R&D. And what we did, we did one experiment and started selling the product to some medium-sized restaurant. And for the genuine reviews and acceptance, we were thinking how we can get the genuine reviews. Because in one exhibition or two exhibition, we can't get so much reviews. We did exhibitions also, but what we decided, we sold our products to like medium-sized restaurants for our target of 100 ton. And we achieved that target very successfully. Now we are on the way to launch officially. We were supposed to launch the products in April, but due to COVID circumstances over the world, we decided too late. And we are looking for food services. We are B2B, and now we are very much focusing on B2C because what I am getting the inquiries from last 3 months is really a wonderful. What I can tell you, the COVID also playing the major role in exposing the animal agriculture. And from the last 3 months, I'm telling you what I am receiving the phones, what I am getting the inquiries more than the 5 times or 8 times when I started the company. So we are now focusing on the B2C also, but prior our focus was only B2B and food service. But now we are divided into, split it into 50%, like 50% would be like food service and B2B, and 50% would be B2C, because the situation everybody know around the world. So that's why we made these packages and all. And now very soon announcements will come, and we are in communication with dealers and the big chains around the world, right? But firstly we will introduce the product very soon, maybe or next month, very soon in the India, and after the India we will go abroad, outside.
And so you and Simranjit, I think you have a frozen sort of product as well as an ambient product, correct?
Yes, both we have. We have an ambient also. We have a frozen also, because before this ambient, we were doing only frozen. But there is so much like restrictions on frozen for transportation and all. But the taste is the frozen one is the very much better than ambient. But but the so much we have the so much flexibility of using the product, flexibility of transporting. For like this is, see, this is the ambient product. See, this is the ambient product. What we have to do, just like put in the boiling water or put it in microwave, and this is I can put this product anywhere. More than 12 months is the life. But the taste of the frozen is a very much better than the ambient one. But we need ambient one, because we were targeting the mass public. So to target the mass public, we can't go in the frozen, because in India we don't have so much of like a big scale of frozen, because that's why we did R&D for the ambient too and the frozen too. Now we have both the category of frozen and ambient.
So Nicholas, yours is chilled, I assumed, because it's foie gras, and Sunny, yours is frozen. Jin, yours is frozen as well?
Yeah, frozen as well.
Okay, all right.
It's just more we sell it in the frozen to chilled. I'm sure, Jin, it's similar, where it's transported frozen. I think in the US you have better cold supply chains.
Okay.
But ultimately, it's sort of like the Beyond model, right? You freeze to chill, and then people take it home and cook it and or freeze it back.
Okay. I know that all of you, Simranjit, you were a part of you're currently a part of an incubator. All of you have been a part of an accelerator. What's that experience? Was that a useful experience? Do you recommend that for entrepreneurs to do? Maybe Simranjit, you want to go first? Because you are from the ProVeg incubator, right?
What ProVeg and what Big Idea Venture is doing for the startups is really a wonderful job what they are doing. Because when we get into ProVeg, and right now we know what the difference in the company is. We are getting so much of, not only I will say motivation, but the daily what they are doing for us. What the daily fireside chats, so much workshops, so like designing workshops, and there are marketing workshops, production workshops, and there are lots of things. And we also get a grant of 20,000 euros and a potential of up to 1,80,000 funding in the coming future. And what Big Idea is doing is really a wonderful job, because maximum of Indians and maximum of Asia they are targeting, and they have a 2 accelerator in New York also, and Big Idea also. And I think these both accelerators, both incubators are really a wonderful. What I highly recommend, you must join the accelerator, because before joining the incubator, we were thinking like what we will do in the incubator, because we have done all the R&Ds, we have done everything. I think there is no need of, but that was our big mistake, that maybe if we didn't join that. But after the joining of ProVeg, really what our company is now is a very much change. That was
the question I was going to ask you, because you did say that you had finished your R&D. So I was wondering, with a factory in place and a product, why an incubator? And I think you just answered that question. What about the rest of you guys? I mean, what do you have to say about being a part of an accelerator? Would you recommend that for everybody else?
Yeah, I'd say if it's your first company, it's definitely a smart choice to join such a program, an accelerator program. In our case, Big Idea has been very helpful, and I think it's because of them also that we've met with you and are participating to this panel today. So thanks to them for this connection. And yeah, essentially they really position you in an ecosystem where you'll have plenty of connections, industry experts, mentors. In the case of Biotech Ventures, I think they have somehow like 200 or something experts in the mentor portfolio. So just yesterday, I've connected to an expert in the regulation of cell-based meat in the US. I got a direct introduction, and I'm talking to this person in a few days. So yeah, I guess it's a matter of the strength of the network that this or that accelerator has. As well as also the cohort companies that you become friends with after a few months. And it's really also part of the fun of joining an accelerator, just meet other entrepreneurs and go through the same phases alongside.
So I got to ask you a sort of a COVID question to all of you. Given that these accelerators and incubators were set up where you were physically present in a particular location, and now you're doing all of this, I guess, using Zoom and other such fora, have you talked to people who've done the face-to-face? Is there a significant difference in the experience in terms of sort of this remote via video as opposed to face-to-face interaction, or has there?
Yes, I think that in-house session were can be so much well than what we are doing right now, but if we see the situation around the world, right, everybody, even we are sitting at the home and doing and not able to doing nothing, not able to doing anything, but if in this situation they are supporting the big idea and the pro-veg, in this situation if they are really supporting the startups for plant-based and cell-based, that I think that's a really salute to them.
Yeah,
because
I agree.
Situation is, yes,
I agree. Karthika, sorry.
Yeah, Jin, I had a question for you. I think in a recent podcast, you'd also talked about how with the cell-based sort of pork, you can also reach the Islamic faith population, right? Can you talk a little bit through how you're planning to address that?
Actually, I mean that's a really sensitive topic, right? Because I mean it has been for years, millennials, right? So many years that actually in their religion that they are not allowed to consume pork. But I mean this has always been brought up by a lot of people, right? They're curious. Hey, you're doing a pork, and it's plant-based, so can actually Muslims eat it? To be honest, I'm not in any position to say it because it's still up to themselves whether they want to eat or not. But from my point of view, at the end of the day, this is still a plant-based product. All my ingredients, every ingredient that I use is all plant-based, all halal certified. So, but it's ultimately still their choice. We don't want to go and force it down to them whether they want to eat or not. But it's very interesting right now. But I think at the end, to me, really, is still their choice, and whether they want to take it or not, it's all up to them.
But as you said, it's all halal. It's obviously 100% plant-based. Yeah. I think you also have Buddhist-friendly in yours,
yes.
So that's another way to market that. Yeah, I mean, I guess if a vegan can eat it.
Yeah, exactly, right?
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, when we launched this project, we didn't have the Muslim market in mind. It was more for the Chinese market because we wanted to replace traditional pork. We want to solve real problems because pork is consumed by Chinese and the supply has a lot of issues, especially due to disease like the recent African swine fever that actually wiped out more than 200 million pigs. So that was the problem that we wanted to solve. But of course, interestingly, along the way, people start popping up this question, and I mean, it's really up to them whether they want to eat or not. But it's not something that we are targeting right at this moment. Yeah.
Just a follow-up question, Jin, and this could be quite naive, but when we were talking to Varun from the Good Food Institute, one of the things he was saying was how pork or mutton, especially in grassroots communities, can be seen as like a privilege, as like a meal that where you sort of achieved something. Is that the same sentiment in China? If yes, then how are you sort of going to replace that sentiment in the minds of your consumer?
Yeah, actually you're right, because I think generally if you look at it, generally in not only in China but basically the whole of Asia, Southeast Asia, the people are starting to get more and more wealthy, right? And as a form of wealth, you want to eat more protein. Is a natural process. and it's only time before we reach somewhere like you look at US or UK where people has become so wealthy that, hey, I've been consuming meat on a daily basis. It's not something I want to sustain anymore. It's not sustainable, and that's when they want to switch to more plant-based alternatives, right? But of course, if you look at this, you have to wait many years, right? So, but at the end of the day, if you look at how humans consume, it still boils down to taste and flavors, right? To the end dish. When you decide what you want to eat for lunch, you don't think whether is it meat or vegetables or fruits, right? It's just something, oh, I have craving for this, I want to eat this dish, then you go for it. So I think that's even more important to create a really delicious dish using plant-based, and people will want to come back for that dish actually. Yeah, so that's how we view it. And if you can create really delicious product, whether is it plant-based, whether is it cell-based, whether it's meat, vegetables, I think people will still come back for more. That's more important.
So I think, I mean, the interesting for to follow up on the halal thing, I think if you were making a cell-based pork, that would be a little bit more problematic, right? Because that definitely is still pork. It's just not killing a pork, right? It's not gone through.
It's still coming from the pork, yeah.
So that could, whereas a plant-based one, obviously, still, at the end of the day, it's a plant.
It's a plant. If you break down all the ingredients, you look back, you take a step back, and you look, everything is still a plant.
Yes.
So if they can eat plant, why not?
Right.
Yeah.
It's actually in discussions, right? So it's not decided yet. I think there's discussion within all the cults and the religions, whether how to perceive and how to let's say label cell-based meat products. So in the Jewish community as well as in the Muslim community, there's been big discussions. And even if you type cell-based meat and kosher or halal, you'll see that there is plenty of articles and papers on this. It's a very interesting topic.
Yeah.
It also depends on the process of the way actually you turn the cells into a product, of the source of the cells. In our case, they come from an egg, so it's also a very different story than just doing the biopsy on an animal. So yeah, there's all these parameters that makes the topic very, very fascinating.
Oh wow! So this is something. So this is something that we've never heard. So this could be a theologian, a battle of theologians. I mean, you would be going down to the essence of the science to see whether something is acceptable to in a kosher sense or a halal sense, right? I mean, wow. I mean, that's a whole whole other topic we could have a conversation.
Yeah, not to add another spanner in the works, Lavi, but this is something that I've been personally thinking about, because obviously I'm of the Hindu faith and things like that. But, can you have like cell-based dairy milk that replaces all of the stuff that goes on in temples, because there are tons and tons of liters of milk that is poured on these, deities or whatever, and that's another theological discussion potentially that we could have.
Yeah, I mean, actually, it's the same for beef as well, right? I mean, especially in India, in your religion where actually beef is not consumed. I mean, even for Buddhists, right? Some of the Buddhists in Southeast Asia actually they don't consume beef as well. But it reached a point where now suddenly I can eat as well. So am I allowed to eat? Am I not allowed to eat? Yeah. So. I mean, when we appeared on the news, actually there was some discussion among the Muslim group in Malaysia that it was like 50-50, like can I eat, can I not eat? Then there was a huge debate. Some say yes, some say no. So at the end, it's still down to personal preference, right?
Yeah.
Karthika, do we have any questions coming in, or?
We do. Unfortunately, there's a hiccup with the going live process, Lavi. I just wanted to let the panelists know, because Facebook Live is just not
live today
with us. But I did test it out with YouTube Live as well. So it seems like a Zoom related issue. So it's something that we'll have to debug with Zoom. So, but there is one question that's come through. What's the difference between an incubator and an accelerator?
Would anybody know the difference?
For 6 letters, 5 letters.
Thanks, Bunny.
Are they synonyms for the same thing? Are they the same thing? One and the same thing with the incubator accelerate?
Yeah, I don't think there's any material difference.
No material difference. Okay.
Right? Like, sure, Jen, I don't know.
Simranjit, you have something to say? Simranjit, you were saying something?
Yeah. See, I think what's the difference in incubator and accelerator is like an incubator is a very fresh person can apply, who has like some dreams or some ideas in the mind, and from the very beginning he can apply in the incubator. And the accelerate those companies who are like started the company, and now they have done something, and now they want to accelerate. Like my question was in mind when I was applying to Provesh incubator, like why I'm going to incubator, because when I read the definition of incubator in the Google, so I decided to why I'm going to incubator, because I have done the things. But when I spoke to them, so they said in the starting we incubate the companies, and we see in the mid, if the companies come in the form of the acceleration, then we accelerate those companies.
Okay.
Yeah, so their name is the incubator, but they starting from the incubation. If the company is the level of accelerating, then they accelerate the company. And
Yes,
in the big idea is the name already is the accelerator. They accelerate the companies. And incubation
exactly. To some accelerators, you cannot really apply if you're not a company yet, but some incubators accept you even pre-incorporation, so even when the company is not incorporated. So we did that in France. We joined an incubator when it was only Victor, Antoine, and I, my two partners, just not a company, only 3 people willing to work together. We got access to a lab, essentially for free, and that was called an incubator, and we could make our first experiments there. Just to de-risk the project and see if we could work on foie gras, on cellular foie gras, etc., etc. So that was the very beginning of our journey in our case at an incubator before joining Big Idea as an accelerator.
Okay, so you went through the, as Simranjit was saying, incubate, then accelerate process, Nicholas.
Exactly. Yes.
Okay. And Sunny, is your manufacturing done in the US?
Ranjikukumanga, yes, our co-man is here, and that's the 2-month process essentially. So we're formulation complete, and now it's like just getting that factory or co-man up and running.
Yeah, co-man or co-packer, right? The same thing, right? Co-manufacturer.
I guess. Yeah, we should say co-person or co-packer.
Okay. And in the US, I think that there's a lot of options there where you obviously, are you doing the same thing, Jen, in Singapore? You are using a co-manufacturing or co-packing to do your
Yeah. But my co-manufacturer is in Malaysia.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So then you manufacture in Malaysia. Obviously, it's a drive across to Singapore and the markets. So that's relatively easy.
Yeah.
And Nicholas, you're doing all of this in Paris, I guess, because you're still pretty much R&D.
Exactly, yes. We think that France is a very nice spot for the R&D phase. We have a lot of government support. We are also supported by public institutions. We have the European money, so we've been selected for a European grant, as well as directly French public money as well. So yeah, the ecosystem is very supportive for this phase, as well as also we have amazing scientists here in France and in Europe in general. So yeah, just for this phase, France is a nice spot.
Great. And Simranjit, you've done all of this without any government support, I assume, or have you got any support?
In the starting, we invested our money. We are two. I'm the founder, and another is my co-founder. We invested money by our own, but now we are in the communication with some investors, and we are looking for investments also. I'll tell you why we didn't go for the government money. Why we didn't go for the bank loan? Because when I get into the bank, I want the bank loan for the making the plant-based meat. So first the question they asked me, yes, please tell the whole process to us. What machinery will we buy? What the process? So I was so scared. Why I should tell my whole process to them because of few money? No, I'll not take, because that was so risk for me. Because if they didn't give me any loan, but when the whole file could be in their bank, and my whole process can be leaked. So because of that only, I didn't raise money from bank. We invested money by our own, but now we are in the communication with investors, and we are looking for investments.
And you made a plant that is obviously you own your own plant. That plant is, yes. I understand, is quite automated. That doesn't require a lot of human intervention. Is that correct?
Yes. It's a semi-automatic plant. Doesn't require so much of a human because it was my experience in the last factory. If it depends on some particular person, that can be a failure of the business. So what I decided to make the machinery and make the whole product line. So even a newcomer can learn the project in the 3 hours on the day, and he can or she can work on the very next day. So I was main focused on this only. So that's why we were late on our R&D, because we are not depending on any specialized person. We can move our factory from here to US to Turkey to anywhere in the world, because what we have is here only, nothing else.
So I think what I've enjoyed today is kind of the we've had a trans world conversation from one part of the world, from the coast of California all the way to Singapore, and in between. So thank you guys for joining us. At very early hours in the morning for you, Nicholas, and Sunny, very late at night for you, and then all of us are sort of in the middle there. But I hope this panel was useful for all of you as well. It certainly was enlightening for us. And Simranjit, what we can do is, if you share that video with Kartika, what we'll do is we will post that online as part of Pandemic Punditry, and we will tag the recording of this talk to it. So it'll actually end up getting more probably views than if you were to have played it today. So we'll please share that if you don't mind with us, and we will and launch. And that applies to anybody else also on the panel. If you have any marketing promotional material that you want us to feature, we'll happily do that on Pandemic Punditry and tag the recording of this session with that. So I think I've done already. I saw something that Nicholas had posted, and I had done that, but we'll do that a little bit more formally. If you guys would like us to do that, we're happy to do that on your behalf. Well, I've certainly learned a lot of stuff. I don't know about you, Kartika.
Yeah, I definitely have. Words that I've never heard before, for sure.
So thank you again for joining us. And we look forward to hearing about your future progress as you guys become billion-dollar companies in your own right. Don't forget us when you do that. And at some point, wherever, if we end up in Paris or in Singapore or Malaysia or California, love to taste your product at some point in the future. Yeah.
See, I knew that was coming. When Lavi said, "Don't forget us," what he really means is use us as testers.
Yeah, we're happy to be guinea pigs at any time. You can send samples and not a problem.
Anytime.
Hang out with people.
Yeah.
Yeah, please come.
So Sunny, do you have plans to go beyond lamb at some point?
Yeah, so we have our next product. It's a Muscovy duck. So Peking duck, as I think Jen alluded to.
Oh, wow.
It's sort of the duck that most people consume, but it's very, again, like kind of muted in flavor. So we found this really gamey, delicious duck. It's called Muscovy duck, and there's other like wild ducks that are even tastier. So we couldn't get them because we can't go hunting now to actually go get the biopsy. So we think it's a pretty tasty duck. So we're doing that, and we're thinking about which formats to put it in. We could obviously put it in sausages and stuff, but we're thinking, well, why not duck nuggets, like a ducket? Because it's like
ducket, love it.
I don't know, bucket, ducket.
Love it.
I love the marketing of that ducket.
Yeah, the ducket would be a fun marketing thing. But yeah, so we're it's things that people are familiar with because you don't want to push them too far right now. But we think duck is a really interesting flavor profile.
Well, with this pandemic, the reason that we came up with this series was that, frankly, we figured that people would make the link that was sort of always there between zoonotic diseases and our food choices. So we said, okay, let's create a series called "Putting the Planet on a Pandemic Diet." And what we wanted to actually showcase was that actually there are plenty of alternatives. And they may be nascent. Some of them are actually in the market, but there are a whole bunch brought on by entrepreneurs such as yourself that is coming. Everything from Muscovy duck to mince to foie gras to mutton and already pre-cooked food like Simranjit is doing. I mean, so the options are there, and you'll only get, I guess, more plentiful and more closer to the real thing. So if you are thinking of putting the planet on a pandemic diet, I think the alternatives exist, and this panel today has certainly helped us on the meat side of things. So thank you again, everybody, for joining us. Have a great week.
Yep.
And
thank you.
Thank you so much,
Thank you so much.
Such a wonderful session and giving us a beautiful friends like Sunny, Nicholas, and Jane. So thank you so much.
I'm definitely friending you, my friend. I love your energy.
So we'll create a LinkedIn group for all of you as well, so you can sort of exchange your because I think all of you are linked in with me, and I'll just create that so you can link in with each other and share ideas, right?
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Great.
Oh, no, I'm finding Simranjeet on my own. I'm seeking him out.
Yeah, we love to, and we are open for any type of sampling. If you want to do any type of sampling for the news, for the white labeling also, we are open for any type of startups. Please.
Thank
Fantastic.
you again, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Take care.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Take care.
Thanks.
Take
Thank you.
care.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.